But first, while in the United States today, Foreign Minister Penny Wong said the Iranian ambassador's call, quote, to wipe Israel off the map was inflammatory and repugnant.
Those comments are inflammatory and they're repugnant and they do not represent Australia. They're inconsistent with Australia's values and our views. Yes, we have. My department has spoken with the ambassador about these issues and other issues.
Not the minister, mind you, taking the ambassador to task, but her public servants. Now, here in Australia, the Prime Minister chimed in too.
We have called in the Iranian ambassador to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, as is the protocol when something like this happens. There's no place for the sort of comments that were made online in social media by the Iranian ambassador. They're abhorrent and they're hateful, they are anti-Semitic and they have no place.
I bet the Iranian feels like he's been whipped by a wet lettuce. I mean, how can someone who thinks Israel should be wiped off the map, who refers to Israelis as, quote, Zionist plague, remain as a guest in this country? Meanwhile, the Albanese government has resumed Australia's $20 million a year funding to UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees. This aid was briefly suspended after credible accusations that UNRWA staff were involved in the October 7 atrocities, the murder, rape and kidnapping of nearly 1,500 innocent Israeli citizens. But under pressure from people like Tony Burke, whose electorate is 25% Muslim, this funding is again flowing to this heavily compromised body that could only operate in Gaza with the consent of Hamas. A death cult, of course, Hamas pledged to the total destruction of Israel. After the first round of accusations and the funding suspensions, UNRWA fired some of its staff. And today the United Nations has officially announced that 9 UNRWA staff may have been involved, they say, in the October 7 atrocities, and they too have been fired. Now, presumably, the 9 staff that have just been fired are in addition to staff dismissed earlier for their involvement in October 7. Now, if it was right for the government to suspend funding on the basis of those claims, mere claims back in January, how can the government keep funding UNRWA on the basis of today's actual admissions from the UN? And how can the government castigate the Iranian ambassador for wanting to destroy Israel, who's funding UNRWA and others are getting there, have staff on their books who want to destroy Israel, not just destroy Israel, but who were actually engaged in a barbaric assault on the country and its people? This is a government that is conflicted, weak and sneaky. Conflicted because some of its senior frontbenchers are appeasing local Islamists in a bid to stop them running candidates against them. Even some Labor insiders have reached out to me. They're worried that the Prime Minister and Tony Burke are on a unity ticket to save Labor seats by trading Palestinian visas for votes. Weak? I say weak because this government won't take strong measures against anyone. It wouldn't send a frigate to the Red Sea, it won't deport foreign criminals, it won't deregister the CFMEU, and now it won't stop funding UNRWA despite the United Nations' own admission that it's been employing terrorists. And the Albanese government is sneaky because Wong thinks that she can get away with mere words against the Iranians while continuing to fund the Friends of Hamas. Now, all of this raises even more concerns about the government's plans, not just to admit another 1,000 or so Gazans, but to give permanent residency to the 1,300 who have come here since October 7, and the 2,000 or so with a visa who still haven't got here yet. And this is all despite the fact that we have no diplomatic staff in Gaza, no one to run security checks on any of these individuals. As the former ASIO boss Dennis Richardson said today, proper security checks are vital before any Palestinians are accepted.
Before anyone from that area receives permanent residence, there should be proper security checks, most certainly.
Here's how it works with terrorists. Right now, under bombardment from Israel, Hamas would be desperate to get its key operatives out of Gaza, those that aren't out already and hiding in the region, perhaps even hiding here in Australia. And if we're using UNRWA to vet people coming to Australia or to select them, and who else would we be using? Well, we'd be working with Hamas accomplices and collaborators. Now, if that's the Palestinian Authority, well, they're not much better, in my view. This looks to me like votes for visas. It is a scandal and it must be exposed.